Hey guys, Darren Carr here, Coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode about AFL Fantasy Preseason. Before we get stuck into today's episode, I really just want to give you guys a huge shout out for all the love and support you guys gave me on my last video. It really means the world to me that you guys want to hear what I have to say, and a huge shout out to all the people that gave me some feedback. It was really appreciated. So, without further ado, let's get stuck into this episode where we're talking all things AFL Fantasy Defenders. Enjoy. Alrighty, so we're here on the AFL Fantasy website, and all I've done is gone to defenders and teams selected by. And what we'll be discussing today is we'll be looking at everyone that's over 10% owned, and we'll just be discussing some pros and cons of what I think and why I won't be starting some of these selections. So I'll also be skipping over the rookies. I'll probably touch on them on another video and go from there. Alright. So first up is Nic Dawes at 48.29%. Now, when I looked at this mind blows me why he selected so much, because there's never been in consideration for my squad at all. Coming into it, even from last year, I was like, nah, knowing that he's moving into the midfield, he's going to cop more attention. It just doesn't see that appetizing to me. But some of my pros and cons for him is that when he does get that 50% CBA role, which is more than likely he'll fold into next year. He averaged 113 over 8 games in that. So that's already, 4 points above? What's he priced at? 109. So that's 4 points of upside he's already got built into his system. So that's, I guess, one of the reasons why I can see it. But the other reason, I guess, is that he's clearly the number one defender. He's probably 5 to 10 points better than the next best, who would probably be a Sinclair at 102. So there's your points of difference where you're making those 10 points extra each and every week on other people that don't start him. So I guess I can see it from that point of view, but the negatives outweigh the positives in my thought process. So the massive red flag for me is just the fixture that he has. So we've all spoken about, Hawthorn and Finn McGuinness, and he's going to get, the traders say fingered and stuff like that. We won't talk about that here, but we obviously know that one, and he's got the bye in round 5, so that's the huge red flag. But I'm also a little bit interested in his other fixtures coming in the first 6 weeks. So it comes up against Sydney Swans in round 1, the first round that fantasy kicks off, and he'll probably have Rowbottom as a bit of a run-round player. He's not a full-on tagger, but he's a bit of a defensive midfielder who plays at jobs just to keep some midfielders accountable. So I'll expect him to do a bit of a job. Round 2 would probably be Windhager. We've known him to be a tagger in the past, and he does quite a good job at that. So I'd expect him to be accountable for that as well. Brisbane Lions is probably less likely, but Dunkley is sort of their defensive midfielder, that does a bit of job and keeps them accountable, so I'd expect that. Obviously, McGuinness will keep him to low, and then the bye, and then you come to Port Power, who they have Willem Drew, who runs through the midfield and does defensive jobs as well. So it's just, to me, I couldn't possibly start him on that basis alone. Just he's more than likely going to drop in value just from all the tags. He's not going to have a ceiling game. Maybe 1 or 2 odd here if he can break the shackles. But it's just apparent to me that he's going to drop in value, and I think other people are going to, and hopefully me, are going to pick him up quite a bit cheaper, come round 7, 8, once he's got past most of the tag risks and can open up his season after that. So that's the reason I'm fading him. And you've always got to make a plan to get these sort of players, especially when he's a clear number 1 defender. So my plan is to get him in quite early on, and maybe ideally around 7, but we'll have to see how the rookies line up and how the cash cows are looking. So, but ideally probably before round 10 is ideal for me. So alright, that's enough on Dacos. We'll go on to Zack Williams at 37.91%, 442k. He is just ridiculously cheap, isn't he? So I think we all know how cheap he is and what he is capable of doing in previous years. So positives I have for him is probably 20 points unders of where he's at. So he's priced at 49, and in previous years where we've seen him, he's got upwards of 70, even in the 90s, but I don't expect him to get that high. He hasn't done 90s since he's been with Carlton. Obviously, he was at GWS previously, where he did his 90s. I think it was back in 2019 or something like that. So quite a few years ago now. So my prediction for him is going to be around that 65 to 85 mark. And I know it's a big range, but that's just the floor I sort of see where he sits, and 85 is probably the higher end. Just thinking about the people that are around him. You got Adam Sarge, you got Jacob Wiedering, you got I can't remember now. Yeah, you got a few others there as well. So there's a fair few mouths to feed that average around that 70 mark. So he's just gonna. I don't see a super high ceiling for him. I think he's just gonna be that cash cow. He's too hard to ignore at that price. But my opinion has cooled of him. But another pro I have for him is that you get the round 0 preview, so we can see his role. And I think that sort of will knock off his normally when a player comes back from an injury, a long-term injury especially, they have minimal game time. So I can foresee that he will probably have 50% game time in round 0, and he may score a 50 or a 60, something like that. So that will probably throw a few people off. But if you look at the numbers, and I reckon he'll come back in round 3, he will get that time on ground back up, and he can push 70, I reckon. So, but that's sort of where the pros really stop for me, because he's obviously got the round 2 bye as a con. Having the early buys is never ideal, because that means less points on field. But I'm treating these value picks as a little bit differently compared to my premium picks. So I'm more than happy to accept these value players with an early round buy. So, and it's just obviously a huge injury risk with his injury history. So he hasn't played a full season since 2019, where he had 20 games and averaged 92.7. So he played 0 games last year. He played 9 games in 22. He played 14 games in 21 and 12 games in 2020. So he's just never been able to put a full season together for a few years now. So he's just one I'm calling a little bit on. I'm calling my expectation, but at this point in time, he's in my side, and I can see why everyone else is picking him. So let's move on to Hayden Young. So Hayden Young, he's pretty much a lock on my side. I think he's a lock in everyone's side, and I think that ownership percentage will jump up to probably closer to 50 come start of the season. So some pros I have for him is that he averaged 97.8 over the 5 games in 2023 when he became a midfielder. So he's priced at 89, so that's already 8 points of upside, 9 points of upside just there alone, and that was only in a very small sample of 5 games where he came across a few different players. I think it was against Brisbane and Adelaide, so a few harder matchups in there. So he had a pretty good floor ceiling. I think he scored 91 against Port Adelaide in the back end of last year when he became a midfielder. And they're the hardest team to score against. So if that's his floor, then there's lots of things to look forward to for Hayden Young. So another one I saw as an improvement for him is that he didn't really show his marking prowess in those final games. So if we go here, I'll bring it up real quick. So if you look at his last 5 games where he was a midfielder, his marking prowess really wasn't on show. He's like 3, 3, 4, 4, 3. He averaged 3 marks over that 5-game period. But if you look back, he's a much better marking guy than that. He should average closer to 5 to 6. So that's probably 9, 10 points unders that he should be able to unlock, just if he can get more of the outside ball and get some of that transition. So, and one thing that surprised me was his tackling numbers. He was really fierce in the tackles, even 10 tackles, which is something I didn't expect. So he could be a real fantasy gun for us if he can get those marks up, I reckon. His fixtures here near or there, I don't think it's anything to be too happy about. Like, he did score a 119 against Brisbane Lions last year when he was in the midfield. North Melbourne's good. Crows are a harder one. Blues aren't great either. And then Port Adelaide are the hardest matchup. Obviously, take this with all a grain of salt. Every team changes a little bit each season, but Port Adelaide's been pretty tough for the last couple of seasons, so I'd expect their game style to be pretty similar and pretty tight and hard to score against. So there'll be a few ceiling scores in there for Hayden Young, but I'd still expect a few basement games where he just isn't able to get around the ball and it's a bit more tight and congested. So, but overall, he's definitely on my side. I've locked him in. He's currently my D2. I have changed up my team a little bit since my preview, so but I predict him to be averaging 105, and he's, where is he? So if that's what, I think 16 points under, so there's plenty of value in Hayden Young, and I reckon he'll be a lock for top 6 defenders. So yep, that's Hayden Young done. Get him in your side. Next one, so skipping over to Toby Pink, we'll go to Kitty Coleman. So Kitty Coleman, my opinion has cooled a lot on Kitty Coleman. When I was at the grand final and I was watching him rack it up, 100 points at half time, I had locked him on my side. I opened up my phone, got my spreadsheet out, or got my little notes to have my 2024 players up, and I had written him in bold letters, get Coleman in, and yeah, since the fixtures come out, my opinion has cooled, and I've looked into the data, and it's just not as appetizing as I once thought it was. So some of the pros I thought I'd go through is that a lot of the argument to starting him is to do with Daniel Rich retiring. So I looked into the data of that, if I can find it. Here we go. Let me just quickly bring it up. I did have it before, but just reloaded. So if we go on to DFS and go with and without and go Daniel Rich for 2023 season, you can see that without Daniel Rich, he is about 80.6. The average is about 80.6. So which is about 10 points, 10 points above where he's priced at. So at that price range, I don't think 10 points is enough for me to start him, especially not with his early round 2 bye, and just that point of view. I know he's probably that main distributor of halfback now with Daniel Rich gone, but it just wasn't evident enough with the games that Daniel Rich missed from last season that he'd really take that next step. And another thing I wanted to touch on that I found interesting was his kick-in stats. So if we go in here and we look at the kick-ins for last season, Daniel Rich obviously had the most at 145, which is massive. Kitty Coleman really didn't do... wrong year. So Kitty Coleman only took 66% kick-ins play on. So he really needs to bump that up and really needs to become more aware that if he wants to take that next step and really become a fantasy threat for us. So all these factors really just knocked my thinking into not selecting him. And I don't think he'll be on my radar unless he really takes that next step early on in the season. So yeah, I expect him to probably be around that 85 to 90 guy, but I don't expect him to be that smash pick that we're all sort of expecting. So I've called on him a lot, and I'm surprised more people haven't called onto that. So we'll wait and see on that one. So next up is Jack Sinclair. He is priced at 102. Some of the positives I have for him is that after the bye he averaged 107.3. So that's already 5 points upside on what he was able to produce in 2023. And it's just there's other things that make me a bit hesitant with him sometimes. It's just the role is really dependent week by week. Sometimes he gets thrown in the midfield, sometimes he's off the halfback and he's that main distributor. But I'm just really not sure where his role sort of stands now with The inclusions of Windhager into the CBAs, and now you've got Paddy Dow coming into the side. Is he going to be a main CBA guy as well? Where does that leave Sinclair? Does he then go to the back half and become that main distributor again? So that's really my thinking with, not selecting him at this point in time. Even though I still think he would be a lock for top 6 defender, because he's just that good. He knows how to accumulate. He's a points per minute beast. He's an endurance beast too. He doesn't spend too much time on the bench. He loves to take the kick-ins. He kicks on at 93%, so he obviously knows that he gets those extra points. But he is number 2 to Wangani Malera, who is the main kick-in guy at St Kilda, so he's very much in and out of my side at this point in time. Sometimes I just want to pick him for security because he doesn't have that early buy, but I think there's too much value in the backline to pick someone that's just going to meet their average and not probably do too much besides that. The other interesting thing I wanted to mention is that St Kilda were the highest scoring team fantasy-wise last year. And for some, that's a good thing, and I can see that continuing, but for others, and myself included, I can only see that going down, because the only way he can go, is down. So that could hinder his improvement and possibly even bring his average down slightly, just if they're not able to chip the ball around. And there has been whispers that they're trying to change their game style another year under the new coach, Ross Lyon. So maybe he's trying to implement a new system, but generally Ross Lyon's been a very defensive coach, and he loves his little slower game. So I don't take too much into that consideration. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Jack Sinclair. He's very much in and out of my side, so I won't talk you out of it, but he's not currently in my side at this point in time. James Sicily at 21.17%. Now this is another one that absolutely flabbergasted me, because I can't see a world where I would ever pick this guy, and he's never been in my considerations. Just with some of the movements that are happening around Hawthorn, and obviously being a Hawthorn supporter myself, he's looking like he's going to go back to that more accountable role, being that second tall defender, which means he probably won't get as much outside ball and won't be that main distributor. So that with Amon going back there specifically as well, he's been talked about being the main distributor. So I can only see this guy, Sicily, being a slider, and I reckon he will average 95 points. So that's the only reason I won't be selecting him, and not even certain he'll be a top 6 defender this year, which could be a massive call, but that's just my thoughts. But I can see why some people are picking him, just with he's got a good fixture coming up with Essendon, North Melbourne, and the Dogs obviously score well against the St Kildas. There's a lot of potential in those opening games before the bye that he can have a massive ceiling score, which obviously he's done twice in previous years, where he went 2 160s in 2023. So if you miss one of those, it can definitely hurt, and if you can get that as a captain, that would be even better. But he's just very up and down for me, and I just don't see his average continuing this high, with a few of the Hawthorn side improving and just a few the magnets moving there. So that's just what I think about James Sicily, so I won't be picking him. Tom Stewart, I am very hot on Tom Stewart, and I think a lot of the competition's starting to catch up now with him being selected at 19.47%. So his fixture is just unreal. He's got 4 easy teams in the first 5 weeks, which could just grow massive, particularly St Kilda, Hawthorn, Dogs and North in those first 5 weeks. He could just be off to a flyer real early. And it's just with where are Geelong at? Because they're obviously an aging list. A lot of their stars are starting to retire now. Are they going to start throwing the keys to the kids? Are they going to expect to start losing? I expect them to at least start being beaten a fair bit, and the ball to spend a lot more time in their back half, which means, Stewart can rack up a little bit more. They can play that chip game where they need to cool the pace down a little bit just to get some composure, and that could mean a lot of points for Tom Stewart. We've never seen Tom Stewart go over 100, but I'm predicting that this is his year, and he's going to break out and be one of the best defenders that we'll see in fantasy-wise. So he's a lock in my top 6 at this point in time. And just another point, he's got some inbuilt value already from his 96, because he had that injured 14 in 2023, his first game. So he's already probably 4 points under where he should be at, just from that one game alone. And he's that main kick-in distributor from half-back. So he gets plenty of kick-ins, and I expect that to only increase in the year to come. So, all right, Nic Coffield. So I won't talk too much on Nic Coffield because I don't know a huge amount about him, but doing some bit of research into his stats, he averaged in the 60s in 2020 and 2021, which means he's about 20 points under where he should be valued. So that's obviously a pro to him. Starting him, he has no early buy, so he's with the Dogs. That's obviously a nice positive. But one thing is, not knowing too much about him, but just from my point of view, he seems like he's a fringe 22 player. Although there is a spot available for him with Taylor Treloar out, retiring last year, so there's definitely a spot available for him. It's just whether he can take up both hands and make that position his. He's definitely priced at the right range if we want to start him, and as long as he's named round 1 on the field, I will be picking him at this stage. So his 20 points under values is just too much to miss out, and that cash rise would be nice and juicy start of the season. So all very keen on him. All right, well, let's get into Harry Sheel, 14.28%. So I'm quite surprised again why his price so high, but when I looked into the data, it was a little bit more pleasing to hear, because that word out of North Melbourne that he's got to be like a sort of a Mr. Fix-It around there. He could play a little bit halfback, could play a bit of midfield, could play a bit of forward. So it's a bit unknown what his role is, which is just for me is just a massive red flag, and I can't get past that. Just because I feel like his scores are going to be very fluctuating, which we saw a little bit last year when he did get shuffled around. He went from scoring 110s to 40s real quick, just from that little shift. So he likes to sit in a role and likes to just be able to do what he does. He doesn't like to be shifted around too much. So, but his second year in the AFL, we could see some development for him, but from me, I'm just not too sure. I'm not hot on him at this point. But some pros I have for him, if he was to play in the half-back role again, is that he'll probably experience more kick-ins with Zack Williams and Hore out, retiring last year. So that would only lead to more points for him and increase his average. But I think the backline's becoming pretty congested. You got Fisher in there, McKercher, and they've got, a few others like McDonald, Kerr, and whatnot. So I think the backline's going to be pretty congested, and I reckon he'll probably move more up the field where he was drafted as a forward. So, but there's talks about him being a midfielder, so I looked into that as well. When he was in the midfield, when he did 40% CBAs or plus in 2023, he averaged 112. Now, this was only a small sample of 2 games last year, but you can only go by the data you have. So he did average 112 there, so that has plenty of value. But yeah, like I said, I'm just not certain that's his role with, like Luke Davies-Uniacke, you got Wardlaw, you got Stimkin. There's just so many people that are running through that midfield, and I don't see how Sheel can. I don't think Sheel will be one of those main guys. So another thing I think is just that the fixture is just not all that great. It's got 3 hard teams and 1 easy team in the first 6 weeks, so that really just makes it even easier for me not to pick him. But I won't talk anyone out of picking him. If he's a young kid, he's got plenty to prove. But obviously, first year, he averaged 97, so the sky's the limit for this kid. Just based on the data, I just can't pick him at this point in time. Wanganeen Milera. So you guys would have seen in my team reveal that I did have Wanganeen Milera in my team. I've since called on him a little bit, just with a lot of the same things as Jack Sinclair, with St Kilda being the number one scoring team and then possibly coming back to the pack. So that cooled my expectation of him, I reckon. And it's also very rare for a player to break out in his second year and break out again in the third year. So I expect him to probably be about the same as he was last year. So an average around that 91 to 95 sort of areas, and just outside of the top 6. So it's just where he's sort of in and out of my team at this point in time, but I'm very much calling on him at this point in time. So, but some pros and cons from him. He averaged 98.2 after the bye in 2023, so that is already 7 points unders of what he averaged last year and what he's priced at. So visually, he was the main distributor, but we've spoken about that a little bit before with Sinclair. Where does he go? Will he be the main distributor after that? So that's just thrown my thinking a little bit into what do I actually expect with these two? Who's going to be the main distributor? Are they going to turn to Wangani Miller as that younger guy, or are they going to go back to Jack Sinclair, is still in his prime and got plenty to give? So can they both be it? And that could knock both of them out, for my opinion. I'd rather have one main distributor, but here's the number one kick-in player at St Kilda, so which is always a positive. He racks it up there, back there, taking plenty of kick-ins, and plays on a lot as well. So, but I expect him, like I said, to be that 95 guy, and it's just not enough value for me at this point in time to start him. So he's come out of my team a little bit. So, but he's still training with the squad. Alrighty, we'll move on to Marty Hore. So he's priced at 34. I won't speak too much about him because I really don't know a whole lot about him. I know he played 14 games in 2019 where he averaged 61.9, but that also included an 18 injured game in the back half of the season. So he really averaged 65. So that's a sort of a rough figure which I expect from him, but it's very small data from what to expect. But from there, he got an ACL in 2021 before being delisted from Melbourne. He's now recently been picked up. So really, it's for the depth of the defenders. So I don't expect him to play as much as that's hard to say. He's more of definitely a depth player, and he'll be fringe 22 at best. So it's a very risky pick. He could be in and out of the side, but depending on the matchup. So it's very hard for me to say that we should just pick him at this point in time without seeing something. But that's probably one of the positives for me, is that we'll get to review it. We can see it in round 0. And if he's named round 0 and we get to see him play and he plays well, and then he's named in round 1 on field, then I'd be pretty confident in picking him. So that's all I'll say on Marty Hore. So we'll move on from there. So next one up is Elliot Yeo at 10.5, just sneaking in there. He is priced at 70. We're back on this horse after last year with all this. He was pretty much locked in my side last year after all the talks, and then I think he got that hamstring on that knee knock coming in a couple of days before round 1. So then I think he made way for most people in their teams, and back at the same price range, and most people overlooking him. I think he's definitely at the same price range, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be looking at it again when it's the exact same sort of thing. He played 10 games last year. He obviously had a few injury games, and he played different roles here and there. He had limited time across that, so to average 70 in most of those games where he didn't even play full minutes, it's quite impressive, and there is probably a bit of a ceiling here for him. I can see him averaging back to those 90s if he can get his body right. That's the big if with him, and that's obviously just a red flag, like the injury history. He hasn't played a full season since 2019, so it's definitely not a pick for the week. You got to be pretty confident that his body's going to hold up, and he can at least make you some quick bucks before he goes down with an injury again. Not that I wish that on him, but it's more than likely being 5 years now. So, but The last time he had a full season and was healthy, he averaged 102.7. So that's sort of his ceiling range, and that would be a smash pick if he can do that. That's obviously 30 points under. So, but I really see him as a value pick, and he should average from around that 90s if he is in the right role, which it sounds like he's playing in the midfield, and he should get quite a few minutes alongside Tim Kelly and be that number 2 sort of banana, if you want to call it, or number 2 mid. So, but one of the bad things I don't like about West Coast particularly, not just Elliot Yeo, is just their fixture. So they come up against Port Adelaide, the hardest, quite early on. It's just not great. They have no easy teams in the first 6 weeks. So you can look here, first 6 weeks, there's actually no easy teams for midfielders or defenders, really. Oh, defenders, sorry, would be the Bulldogs, would be quite an easy one. But for mids particularly, there's no easy team. So that doesn't really give me any other hope that he will be a smash pick to start with. It will be very tricky for him, and his points will be very limited. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not picking him at the stage, let alone from the injury history. It's just that I don't think he's going to smash it straight away from the set go. It will be more of a gradually build into the season, and that's just the way I see it. I don't think he'll be a smash pick at the start of it. So he's a no for me at this stage. So that's all the players that are above 10%. But I just want to touch on Heath Chapman, just because he's at about 9%, so can sneak him in here. I do like Chapman. I think he's got a bit of upside to him, obviously. Hayden Young moving into the midfield, so I think he's best 22 now, and can get some guaranteed game time, and should play all 24 games, now that's his best 22, and as long as he's healthy, that's the main thing. So we saw in 2022 that he averaged 69.3 over 15 games. So that's basically his price range of 55. That's already 15 points under. So if that's his bottom, his basement range, then there's good signs for Chapman, and I can see him definitely getting closer to 80 with a bit more consistency with his game. Coming off that halfback, I think went back in 22, he was more of a sort of switching between halfback and wing role, and it just couldn't really have a consistent role. So I think with a bit of consistency, a bit more of a chip down the back at Dockers land. So I could definitely see an upside, and he's definitely getting close to being in my team. I just need to see what that role is and make sure he's cemented in that 22. So I'm just big watch on preseason. I didn't really have any negatives on this guy, besides obviously he's fringe 22, but the fixture was also one that I'm not super impressed with. It's not good or it's not really bad either. It's just really mediocre. It comes across one good team and a couple bad teams, so it's nothing too amazing to jump at. So I don't expect too many big games, but I think he could definitely burst out of the box and be a good quick price rise for us in that backline price sub 500k. So that's all the people I want to touch on for now. At a later stage, I will probably do a podcast where it's I touch on all the players that are sort of below 10% that I haven't touched on, and I think could be plenty of value and could be a good pick. So I'll do that at another stage. But that's it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed. That's just my thoughts on what the best defenders are at this current time and who the popular defenders are. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you for the next episode. Cheers. Bye.